The radio crackled to life at 3 a.m., shattering the stillness of Ranger Mark's cabin. A distress call from a neighboring patrol sector, poachers spotted near the eastern ridge. He was needed immediately. Mark grabbed his gear and bolted into the night, his truck's headlights cutting through the dense fog that clung to the forest road like a living thing. But something made him stop. A feeling, primal and urgent, pulled at his chest. He killed the engine and stepped out into the mist. The forest was too quiet. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just an oppressive, watchful silence. Then he heard it, a sound that turned his blood to ice. Not a growl, not a roar, but a wet, labored breathing coming from the shadows beside his cabin porch. His flashlight beam swept across the darkness and landed on a sight that stopped his heart. The leopard. His leopard. The one who had given birth in his cabin 9 months ago, who had saved his life on that ridge. But this time, everything was different. She lay on her side, her magnificent spotted coat matted with blood. Her breathing was shallow, desperate. And her eyes, those golden eyes that had once held such fierce intelligence, were glazed with pain and something that looked unmistakably like goodbye. Mark dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering uselessly over her broken body. He could see the trap wounds on her leg, the deep gashes across her flank. Poachers. The very ones he was supposed to be chasing had already struck here, in his sanctuary. Rage and grief warred in his chest, but her eyes found his, and in that moment, he understood. She hadn't come here to be saved. She had come here to deliver something far more precious. A tiny, barely audible mewl cut through the night. Mark's head snapped toward the sound. There, partially hidden beneath the porch stairs, pressed against the wooden lattice, was a single cub. Larger than the newborns he'd seen that miraculous night, but still so desperately small. The cub's eyes were wide with terror, its spotted fur trembling in the cold mountain air. The mother leopard summoned a strength that shouldn't have existed in her ravaged body. She lifted her head, just inches, and made a sound, a low, guttural utterance that wasn't a growl but a command. The cub instinctively pressed itself harder against the wood, freezing in place. Then she turned her gaze back to Mark. In her dying eyes, he saw it all. The plea. The trust. The impossible choice she had made. She could have hidden her cub anywhere in the vast wilderness. She could have fought to her last breath to defend it in the forest she ruled. But instead, in her final moments, with poachers closing in and her life bleeding out onto the earth, she had brought her baby here. To him. To the only human she had ever trusted. Mark's vision blurred with tears as he placed his hand gently on her heaving side. "I understand," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I've got her. I promise you, I've got her." The leopard's body relaxed. The tension that had kept her alive just long enough to complete this final journey melted away. Her breathing slowed, became softer, and then, as the first light of dawn began to paint the sky in shades of gray and gold, she exhaled one last time. The warrior queen, the impossible mother who had bridged 2 worlds, was gone. Mark sat in the growing light, one hand on the still warm body of the leopard, his eyes on the terrified cub beneath the stairs. The radio on his belt crackled again, the poachers were getting away. But he didn't move. He couldn't. His duty now was to something far greater than any arrest. He spent the next hour moving with infinite patience, speaking in the same low, soothing tones he had used that miraculous night. He placed food near the stairs, then retreated. He showed the cub his empty hands, his non-threatening posture. And slowly, heartbreakingly slowly, hunger and instinct won over fear. The cub emerged. She was female, with her mother's striking golden eyes and that same distinctive rosette pattern along her left shoulder. Mark named her Hope, though he never spoke the name aloud in her presence. Over the following weeks, he became something he never thought possible, a foster parent to a wild leopard cub. He contacted wildlife authorities, secured special permits, and transformed part of his ranger station into a rehabilitation space. He fed her, monitored her health, and most importantly, he kept his distance. She was not a pet. She was wild royalty, and his job was to ensure she could reclaim her throne. Months passed. Hope grew stronger, faster, more confident. Mark created larger enclosures, introduced live prey, taught her to hunt by instinct and observation. He watched with a bittersweet ache as she became less tolerant of his presence, more aloof, more leopard. It was exactly what needed to happen. On the day of her release, nearly a year after her mother's death, Mark opened the enclosure gate in the same territory where her mother had once reigned. Hope paused at the threshold, her powerful young body silhouetted against the forest beyond. She turned and looked at him one final time. In her golden eyes, Mark saw her mother. The same fierce intelligence. The same wild dignity. But he also saw something new, the future. A continuation of a bloodline that had survived against impossible odds because of a bond that defied nature's rules. Then she was gone, melting into the green depths like liquid gold. Mark stood alone in the clearing, the morning sun warm on his face, and he smiled through his tears. The circle was complete. A life for a life. A trust honored across the boundary of species. He buried Hope's mother on a hill overlooking the valley, beneath an ancient pine where the sunlight dappled through the branches in patterns that looked like leopard spots. He placed no marker, no stone. The forest would remember. He would remember. 6 months later, Mark was conducting a routine patrol along the same ridge where the mother leopard had once saved his life. Movement in the peripheral vision made him freeze. There, on an outcropping of rock bathed in afternoon light, sat Hope. She was fully grown now, a magnificent predator in her prime. And beside her, tumbling over her paws with clumsy enthusiasm, were 2 tiny cubs. Hope's eyes met his across the distance. There was no fear, no aggression, just a quiet acknowledgement. She had brought her children to show him, to close a circle he hadn't even known was still open. Then she gathered her cubs with gentle nudges and disappeared into the forest, 3 generations of wild grace continuing a legacy of impossible trust. Mark stood on that ridge as the sun set, understanding finally what he had been given. Not just a story, not just a rescue, but a glimpse into something sacred, the truth that compassion transcends species, that trust can be inherited, and that the bonds we forge in moments of desperate vulnerability can echo through generations. Have you ever witnessed a moment where an animal displayed profound trust in a human? Share your experiences in the comments below. These stories remind us that we're all connected in ways we're only beginning to understand. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more incredible true tales from the wild frontier where humans and nature meet.